Hello there and welcome into Career Competitor, the show that seeks to light that competitive fire within you in order to jumpstart or optimize your career. I'm Steve Meller, your host, and today I'm welcoming in the CEO of Qualifi, Darrian Mikell. And Darrian brings to us a perspective that this show was born on, that of the athlete mindset and what that can do to propel you to stardom within your career. And as much as I love all of our guests, it's guests like Darrian that I certainly connect with the most as a former athlete, as someone who's trying to make their way in the world using and relying upon so many of those traits that sport gave to me. So this is a fantastic episode for people like that are listening in and wondering how on earth can I find ways to take those great characteristics that I used to utilize maybe in the world of sport and find ways to go away and conquer these careers that I am so driven to find success within. So really pay attention to this for former athletes, but at the same time, anyone that's established, anyone that's just looking for that extra edge within their careers, this is another fantastic discussion for people like that. And when it comes to Darrian specifically, he's got this beautiful balance of individual and team sports. So much of what he's done to be successful is very team applicable and also competitively driven, that internal drive to be successful. So like I say at the start of every single episode, Darrian is here to either jumpstart or optimize your career. So let's settle in, sit back, relax, and let's get comfortable listening to Darrian Mikell, the CEO of Qualifi. And I hope you all enjoy. Hey guys, Steve here, and I'm so excited that you've taken the time to listen to the show today. But let me tell you about everything and anything you need to know when it comes to Career Competitor. Firstly, the podcast, whatever platform you're listening to is on right now. Follow, subscribe, specifically those of you that use Apple Podcasts. Leave some sort of a review, some sort of a rating. It really does help build the awareness of the show so that more and more people can be impacted by the messages that we're able to deliver. Now, in terms of the service, that's right, Career Competitor is a service now. I'm offering both individual and organizational coaching. From an individual standpoint, I'm here to help you with life or career goals. We'll sit down, we'll have a 30-minute free consultation, and we'll go over everything we need to go over in terms of you letting me know what it is I can do to help you optimize or jumpstart your life and your career. In addition to that, if you are a representation, if you are a leader of an organization, let me help you incentivize and optimize your team. Find ways to make your unit more cohesive, collaborate, and create a culture where success is a guarantee. I'm here to help you with that. And again, 30 minutes free time. I will sit down, I'll listen, and I'll advise you on exactly what it is I can do for you. And hey, if you just want to learn more about Career Competitor, both the show and the service, careercompetitor.com, or reach out to me with Steve at careercompetitor.com. Let's get to the show. All right, well, I am excited to be welcoming in Darrian Mikell to the Career Competitor podcast. Darrian, how are we today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. And I'm really excited just to kind of see where we go today, because you really are the type of guest that this show was born on. The idea of someone who's come from a life in sports, who's gone on and used so many of those great traits that they developed through their last, I like to say almost like a past life of being an athlete. At least that's how I relate to it now. When I try to work out, it's definitely not pretty. But at the same time, you've got some incredible stuff going on in terms of what it is you're doing today. So before we rewind too far, why don't we actually start in the moment? What is it you're doing today? Just tell everybody, everything you've had going on.
Yeah, aside from being a pickup hooper, I am the co-founder and CEO of a company called Qualifi. It's a software platform in the recruitment industry. So we help employers and recruiters streamline their processes. And we specifically focus on the phone interview step in the process. Coming from a little bit of my past background, one of the things that I identified along with my brother, who's one of my co-founders, is how big the bottlenecks are. Specifically, the phone interview is the biggest bottleneck in the recruitment process. So we have a software solution that allows recruiters to pre-record their own voice, asking sets of questions, and then they can then scale and have a personal and still automated experience with their candidates, sending them invites and they can respond to those invites over the phone in a simple phone call that we record the audio, we record and transcribe the responses of the interviews, and then make it easy for the recruiting teams to listen to and share with their colleagues to make better hiring decisions. And so we've been at that for the last couple of years and starting to really pick up steam. So it's been really fun growing the team, and I get to work with my brother as well, which has been really fun and exciting. And so yeah, that's what I'm up to nowadays.
I'm actually would love to come back to the part of you working with your brother here a little later on in the episode, because I'm always interested about how that type of relationship can maybe be tested in business and stuff like that. But at the same time, I don't want to get into that too soon, because I really want to give people a true appreciation of just who you are, the guy behind this company who's co-founded it, who's running it, obviously is the CEO. You still dabble in basketball by the sounds of it a little bit, and nothing wrong with that, man. I still kick a soccer ball around, even though I was never quite a soccer player anyway. But why don't you just sort of rewind the years now a little bit for us, Darrian, and just give everyone a feel of just this background of sport that you came from?
Yeah, I think I feel like my whole life has revolved around sports in a lot of different ways, which hopefully I can unpack in a summarized way. So me personally, I grew my parents, especially my mom, was a big advocate of just like putting us in a lot of different things, sports and non-sports. So I played like everything growing up, including I was on the bowling team, like a travel bowling team in high school. That's one of the more ones that you don't hear all the time, but the two that stuck with me throughout life, the main one, my first love is basketball. So I started playing ball when I was, I think, 3 years old, and loved it from day one. And then probably around fifth grade, I picked up track and field, and I'm not to flex or anything. I'm a pretty natural athlete, and so that one I enjoyed because I didn't have to work hard to be really good at it. It came easy, yeah. And so those two stuck with me through college. So I played basketball and ran track through college. I went to a smaller school, and I'm based in Indiana. So I went to Indiana Wesleyan University, which is one of the top NAIA schools in the country, especially for basketball. We were good when I got there, and then continued to improve. And the year after I left, they won the national championship. So that's my slight claim to fame there. Yeah. But in other ways that sports has kind of impacted me, are just kind of like I mentioned, a lot to unpack there. Both my parents are athletic. My dad played football at Indiana State. And then I mentioned my one brother, my younger brother, he actually ran track at Indiana State. Track's his primary sport. He unfortunately has bragging rights on his longest long jump compared to mine. I give him a lot of jabs though, because I actually hold records that you can reference in places. So we go back and forth there. So he's beating me all the time, but that's what I always use. I got more trophies and whatnot. And then the cool claim to fame though, especially when I was growing up, so I have an older brother that's about 10 years older than me. He played professional football for, I want to say like 12, 13 years in the NFL. And so when it comes to my parents, I joke about this all the time, because now I'm a parent and getting prepared for my Saturdays being taken away. So I know my dad used to sometimes be frustrated about, how he never got a free weekend because we were always in some sort of event or athletic, some sort of sport or a game or practice, back and forth, traveling and stuff like that. And so, sports have been pretty much a constant throughout my life, and still to this day. Like I said, try to get up and down the court when I can. Monday nights and Friday mornings is usually my days.
There you go. Well, that's awesome, man. I think I always appreciate hearing when someone comes from a family of sport. That's the one thing for me is for as long as I was playing sports as a kid, my memory is that my dad was too. He was playing all these different sports, obviously in a rec capacity by that point. But I think it's a really healthy component for for a lot of people that do pursue athletics is being surrounded by it as much as possible, not feeling as though you're somehow like a chore because you're going against the family model, so to
Yeah.
speak. But it almost sounds like Dad found a way to still
It was
make
like
it
probably
sound
the
like a bit of a
opposite.
chore.
Well, no, I mean, like he's as much as a competitor as us, but it's just, like the whole parenting thing. It's just, sometimes it's like, man, do you guys never not have games,
I
So,
get that part. No, and I can't wait to. I personally can't wait for that moment. I've got a 2 and a
oh
1
yeah,
year old, so for me, once the calendar gets filled up with sport events, I'm going to be pretty happy. I think I say that now.
it's gonna be so much fun.
Come back to me in a couple of years, I guess. But I definitely want to start with just that competitiveness within your family, because it's hard not to have competitiveness with that appetite that you guys had for sport. So for you as a competitor, when you look back, not necessarily on just those moments in basketball or in track, for you, when you looked at yourself growing up as a kid, did you just find yourself to resonate with any opportunity possible to be competing?
Oh yeah. Like, and even to this day, I tend to gravitate to a lot of the. I shouldn't coin it this way, but I tend to get my competitive juices flowing on the non the non not my primary sports. It's usually those
Ooh,
auxiliary sports. So
right.
like I got really into ping pong. I just tried this new thing with the team called foaling. It's, think of cornhole mixed with football and bowling pins. So you're like throwing a football at
I don't
bowling
think I can
pins
think of that,
stationed
man.
stationed on like
That's
a
an
cornhole type
imagination right
board.
there. Wow.
And so those types of things, I'd talk a ton of trash, get really into it.
Right.
Um, and like dodgeball was huge
Of
for me
course. Of course.
growing up, And so my competitive, like my the way I tend to think of myself is a love to win type competitor. I love to improve, love to get better. And I truly admire, I have friends and I admire like the Kobe Bryants, the Michael Jordans of the world. I would coin them as like the hate to lose competitors. Like they're willing to do
Yeah.
anything to not lose. And
Mm.
those are some of the things that they bring are some of the things I try to like bring out of myself in some ways, in the good ways, I should say.
Yeah. I relate to that last part you just mentioned there, because for me, yes, over the years I've suffered losses, but as much as it's maybe stuck with me for a little bit, it's never something that's ruined my day, I guess. Even
Yeah,
today as a fan, like I'm still a fan of sport and I have my teams, but when they lose, I'm like,
I can move
man,
on. Yeah.
and then I get on with the rest of my day. And I think when you reference there, for me, I'm a huge admirer of just Kobe's career, and you're exactly right. A guy that just hated losing and couldn't live with himself if he were to lose.
Yeah.
You've sort of coined it here as loving to win and seeing I guess, finding that appreciation, finding that joy in winning, but understanding that if a loss comes, you can kind of live with it. Is that kind of how you're
Yeah.
explaining it?
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, like me, especially when that's about my natural instinct is wired. And I
Mm,
feel like other folks are wired in a different way. And I
mm,
don't think either is necessarily good or bad. I think it drives you in a different way. For me, like kind of the way I think about it is like, especially when I think about like some of my friends that are wired that way, it's like for me personally, I'd love to play you one-on-one or play a game against you and still be
right.
friends after, and still
Right.
have a good time after. Um, and that's how I think about it, and not hate you after, or like have to cool off for a whole day before we can talk again, that sort of thing.
Right, right, and that's kind of the beauty in some of those. You call them sports, call them games, I guess. In some
Yeah.
cases, those sort of things that if you're someone that can't deal with a loss in that type of environment, I think life's going to be pretty hard.
Yeah.
I think it's a healthy thing to be able to detach yourself from being competitive and wanting to win, and then obviously not being so attached to the idea of winning that it ruins your day. But I do want to kind of stick with this topic now in relation to business, because for someone who is an entrepreneur, for someone who has built their own thing, I'm really interested to learn how you've maybe identified moments within the building of Qualify and its journey where you've maybe had to fall back on some of those competitive instincts at times.
Yeah. One of the big words for me this year has been perseverance. I think that's kind of a competitive, not a competitive word necessarily, but like kind of coming from that.
I think it is 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming from those same sources, where you draw that sort of energy from. And that's one of the things, like one of the biggest things that I've learned through sport is like, how to deal with, setbacks or things that aren't going your way. Things are starting to move in a positive, like a really positive direction for Qualify. And a lot of it's happened over, the course of 2021. But the last, couple of years have not been easy. This is my first time being a CEO. I've been a part of startups before that have gone well, but I wasn't the person leading the charge, if you will. Right. And so there's a lot of things that I had to learn personally. There's a lot of things that I was probably arrogant about and had a over optimistic viewpoint. I'm a naturally very optimistic person. And so I carry that in a lot of things. Sometimes it comes to bite me in certain ways. So things didn't always go the way I planned, but was found ways to stick through it, fight through it, and continue to work to help get us to where we are now, where we are now. And now things are, like I said, starting to move in a more positive direction. But there's plenty of times where, we probably could and should have, quit and turned it in. But I think that's an example of, I feel like that competitive nature. Because one of the things that drives me right now is I feel like we can win a category in the market. And I don't feel like there's a clear dominant winner. And that's why I'm like, no, we can't quit. Like, it can be us. Like, let's go do this.
Yeah. But I think and again, this is why I feel strongly that perseverance is very much a competitive characteristic, is that, you're in this moment now where those 2 years of adversity, of challenges, getting to this point where you're now really, reaping the fruits for your labor. Like, it almost seems as though it teaches you how to not necessarily just rest and not just be satisfied with the status quo. And for you now at this point, like you attested, like you mentioned there, like, hey, we are in a positive moment right now. We are winning in many ways.
Yeah.
But are we satisfied? And
yeah,
it doesn't sound like you're satisfied.
No, yeah, definitely. I was about to say, drawn from the words of Kobe, like, job's not done yet.
Exactly.
Like we're just getting started. And that's, I mean, there's plenty of places to draw motivation from. I'm excited about a lot of things that we have planned or are trying to put into plans. And so the big thing for me that has kind of carried from the beginning was seeing that opportunity that, there's nobody really doing it in the way that we're thinking about doing it. Right. Let's go after it. Let's get this idea started. All right, we can be the front runners. Like now, let's go be those front runners and start to expand and continue to innovate. And so, that's how I think about it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it, and I can't help but feel almost motivated by your story. I'll be honest with you. Like, it's something that really does have an impact on me and someone who's trying to do his own thing. And hearing you sort of discuss the hardships that you probably do have to go through to begin with to get something to build a foundation at the end of the day. That's what you're saying here. You guys spent a long time building a foundation, and there were times where, as you were putting this piece in place and this piece in place, you could have looked at one another and been like, oh man, is it worth it? Is it really worth it? And you kept looking at one another and saying, you know what, it's going to be, and keep going. And this is actually, it feels like a good time to talk about your brother a little bit.
Yeah, I was about to say,
yeah. So why don't you, I mean, if there was ever clashes, I'm going to have to assume it came with brother. So, just talk to me a little bit about what having someone as close to you as a brother has meant during something, during a process like this.
Yeah, no, it's been really great. I think each person, if they're thinking about going into business with their family, probably needs to assess that relationship before jumping in. I felt really confident going in with my brother because, one, we're really close. Two, we have personality types that don't tend to really clash with anybody. We're genuinely cool with everyone that we encounter, and try to build good relationships with everyone that we meet. But between us, we the only time period that we had real issues was probably around my eighth grade or early high school years, where it was on me. I was a jerk to him, and just picked on him just because he was my little brother. And so that's one time period in life where I definitely can admit. There's multiple times I can admit I've done things wrong, but
most importantly, the last 2 years, it sounds like you guys have gotten along pretty good, huh?
yeah, and it's been really helpful because if you're an entrepreneur, as you're going on your journey, like you'll find that there are tons of highs and lows, like literally in the span of hours. You can go from we're about to crush it, we're going to be worth $1 billion to like literally later that day, the people that you thought were you're gonna sell yeah, exactly. You're like, dang, this is gonna shut down tomorrow.
Right.
And it goes back and forth. And one of the things that's been helpful is I don't know if it's coincidence or timing. I know like marriages encounter this a lot, where if one person's freaking out, the other person has like a calm, cool collectiveness to them and can balance that person out. And I found that with my brother Devin. It seems like if one of us is having an off day, the other person had like good things happen and can speak positivity into that person. That's and vice versa. So it's been really helpful to just be able to be there, for each other, and in terms of, just being able to keep each other, in a positive state of mind, or at least get us back to neutral at the very least.
Well, yeah, that makes me want to sort of learn a little bit more about the roles that you're both playing within the company too, because I think in those cases when someone's in one area and someone's in another, it's very easy for there to be reasons to be excited in one area and reasons to be disappointed in the other area. Like where do your roles contrast, I guess?
Yeah, it's we both kind of play. So we have two other co-founders as well that are on the technical side. So they're part of leading the charge on our product and engineering efforts. Mm-hmm. Devin and I'm naturally more suited for like kind of the back office stuff. So my background's in finance. So I love spreadsheets and all that sort of stuff. And I'm an ideas person and collaborator. So I like to jump around in different areas. And so in the early days, we were both, hitting the ground running on the sales side, just trying to figure out who to go after. And that stuck longer with Devin. So he still manages the sales team. We're bringing on a leader for that. And so he kind of is an amoeba. He's the COO. So he kind of jumps into, I see his role as seeing the gaps in the company and filling those, building process around them, and jumping to the next thing. So we're both kind of amoebas and jump in different areas. Mine is more back office stuff. His is more kind of product, marketing and sales, and kind of he kind of ties the company together and is kind of the voice of the customer too. He also leads our customer service and onboarding efforts as well. We're a small team right now, so we all do a lot of different things. And
but so that's good. It's good to start small, right? I mean, sometimes with these sort of things, especially when you're so familiar with the people that you're working with, like you are your brother, and I can't help but just look a little bit about the sports that you were playing there, between basketball, which is obviously so team oriented, and then a sport like track where it's much more individualized. It makes me think of myself. My upbringing was soccer and swimming, and mm-hmm. So when you have those two different sort of environments growing up, and you can kind of take from both worlds and say, okay, where did I find that the team component of what it is I'm doing today is helping me in terms of my experiences in the past, and where did the individualism of striving and pushing myself just one-on-one, how that is helping you today too. And just talk to me a little bit about when you look at the now growing team, as you just alluded to there. You're going to be bringing on some more members of staff. The team component of what you're building there with Qualifi versus where you see the difference in your position, where you're having to take responsibility and you're having to get your stuff done too.
Yeah, no, I see. So I feel like every person has like a skill set and talents and strengths that they bring to the table. And I think one of mine is ideas. So I love coming up with ideas, dumb or genius. Like I love putting them out in the world or capturing them somehow. And so that's one of the things I like to just continue bringing ideas. But then I haven't built anything for Qualifi, like, and that was also one else. And so I love collaborating. So I love taking an idea and being like, all right, who do I know, or who can we find that that can get this to life, or help us do this better. And so that's my favorite piece. And so team is huge. Yeah, and that's one of the areas that I want to continue to figure out how do we continue to enhance the culture that we've started. People love working at Qualifi so far, but we're a small team. And so as you start to grow the numbers, it's not always easy to maintain that. So how do we build a culture that's like that we can continue to enhance and add to it, especially like in a remote sort of environment. So I think that's a unique challenge that a lot of people are trying to tackle today. And so, that's one, that's a huge area of focus for me.
Definitely. And what was funny is I was definitely going to try to get onto the topic of leadership here, but at the same time, like listening to you talk about the way in which you thrive on creating ideas and also then collaborating with the people that are going to maybe help those ideas come to fruition. That goes obviously to what I was just talking about there with individualism versus team, but it's also awesome facets of leadership, like being able to not only come up with the ideas, but even acknowledge, have that vulnerability to say, great idea. Oh, no, this was not a great idea. And being able to actually say, hey guys, like I got it wrong. And then having that collaborative environment too, from a cultural standpoint, where it's like, we are all benefiting from one another. As you said, like we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. We're all going to have areas where we have to have one another's back at a time where we're a little bit exposed. And I think listening to you talk, it almost sounds like your version of leadership stems from those things that you were talking about there that you learned from team and also just individualism in sport.
No, 100%. Like, thinking basketball specific, especially in a college setting where if you're there for 4 years, there's people rotating in and out every year, and they're like there's new people in there going to bring a new skill set, and there's people that are leaving that their skill sets are gone now. And so one thing that I've come to admire is coaches just in general, like how much work goes into being a coach. When I was younger, it was draw up the plays and that's it. But there's obviously a ton of strategy that goes into a strategy around like what's our current team makeup, what are the dynamics in the locker room, on the court, who do we need to bring in to take us to that next level, looking at the competitive landscape and how are we going to beat these key people in our conference, all that sort of stuff. And then staying up late out, like doing scout film, all that sort of stuff. My mind was kind of blown getting into college and just seeing how much, we had like 2-3 hour practices, but like it's a full-time job for them.
Sure.
And so, definitely, thinking about people in a company setting in a similar way. What are the gaps in the company? What are we good at? I would say like right now as a company, like we're really great at product. But one of the things I'm looking for is like, how do we continue to, fill the top of our funnel with, solid leads. And that's looking at, the sales and marketing in terms of, how do we get our name out there? How do we get people urgently interested in signing up for something or, taking a listen to, our sales folks on the team. And so, that's just like one thing that's really fresh, fresh on my mind.
Clearly that's on the calendar for today, huh? That's what you're working on today. But what I really enjoy about this, Darrian, like for me is there's so many, and again, going back to what I said right at the introduction here, there's so many connections to the individual that you were able to evolve into through your life in sport growing up, and how you've been able to fall back on so many of those qualities now in what it is you do. And I think the one thing that is really standing out to me is the I'm going to keep going back to that word perseverance, because you kind of, at first you were unsure of that sort of competitive quality to that. But when you hear about what it is you've done, when you hear about the perspective you have in terms of how you're doing things currently, it's pretty obvious that the satisfaction is always going to be very short-lived in terms of what it is you're accomplishing as a company. And I think that is such a healthy competitive trait to have. It doesn't mean you don't appreciate the work you've done. It doesn't mean that you don't appreciate the situation you're in. It just simply means that you feel like your potential is greater, and you're really excited about striving to reach that potential right now, which, for this show and just for me as an individual in my life of coaching, I can't get enough of that mindset. That's what we're all about. That's why we do this show. For you now, looking ahead, how are you going to continually chase what it is you feel your potential is now as a company?
Yeah, that's a good question. And one I was going to touch back on, I think it is good to celebrate. And that's something that I don't do naturally well.
None of us do, man. I hear you.
I think it's like a miswiring and
oh my gosh,
brain,
as a society, we have to get so much better at celebrating. We really do.
Yeah. But no, continuing to strive is, I think setting high goals is like one of the starting points. And that's a continuous exercise, evaluating like what just happened, like, what are we trying to get to, and how do we get there faster? The name of the game in the startup world is how do we get there, faster? What processes, what people, what things do we need to put in place to get there faster? And so that's the big one for me is evaluating what our targets are. And I think actually shortly after this meeting, I have like time blocked off to really think about what are all the things that I need to be thinking about in terms of planning, especially as we're bringing on new people. So for context, we just brought on our 9th person on the team here in November. By the end of November, we'll be at 13. So awesome. We started the year off with the 4 co-founders, really, that were doing it in some partially full-time, partially part-time capacity. So the company has really changed and grown over this year. And so we've gone through investment processes, and I've talked to a lot of investors. And one of the investors said right now is about going from product to company, going from, so taking like the concept to now building company. Like, how do we not only get the product out in the world, but how do we do so effectively as a unit? I think that's an important, stage of where we're at right now. So
yeah, I really like that philosophy. Just because I think I like to find ways that we can maybe take something that you've just said there and make it relatable to any situation. And I think we can almost all see ourselves as a product in terms of what it is, the impact that we're trying to have in whatever career it is we're trying to have that impact in, and how do we widen that impact, and that's what we're talking about here. How do it's I go from a great
scaling
idea to, it's all really good stuff. And for anyone who's listening to this, man, who's being recruited, who's about to go into some phone interviews or whatever it may be, why don't you just tell everybody information about the company, where we can learn more, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. It's really easy. If you're seeing this online, it got the name in the background,
got a behind it.
But I know this is audio based. So it's Qualifi, and it's spelled with an I instead of a Y. So just like a lot of tech companies do different names. So yeah, it's QUALIFI, and you can find us at qualifi.hr. So yeah, qualifi.hr is our site. And then you can reach out to me on LinkedIn is where I tend to be most active. So yeah, pretty simple I think it should be pretty easy to find me there.
Good stuff. Yeah. Well, I'll certainly share that information too on the back end of the interview. But Darrian, honestly, man, I really appreciate the time, and just good luck to yourself, to Devin, the rest of the guys there, and just everything you're doing. Tripling the amount of staff in the space of 2021 can only mean that you guys are onto something. So just keep up the great work, and all the best. And thanks again for joining us today.
Yeah, appreciate it. And best of luck to you as well. I'm excited to see where you take things.
Thank you. And my thanks again to Darrian for joining us on the show today. And before I start to wrap up here and give you some food for thought to take away with you, let me just reiterate a couple things there that Darrian mentioned towards the end. Firstly, he made it very clear you can reach out to him, Darrian Mikell, on LinkedIn. And in addition to that, their website, qualifi.hr. That's Qualifi spelled QUALIFI.hr. You can find everything you need to know about the company right there, and reach out and see how they can be of help to you. Now, a couple of things that I wanted to really leave you with here based on our conversation. A couple things, 3 things actually, in fact. One is that of seeking collaboration. The idea of being comfortable discussing strengths and weaknesses, throwing ideas out, and being with people that you trust and that you respect, and listening to their insight and just throwing thoughts into the universe and just letting them sit out there, letting people take them in, and then letting them give you feedback. Seeking collaboration is just a wonderful version of initiative that can be so powerful. So don't wait for people to collaborate with you. Seek it. Go in search of the ability to get some insight from others so they can maybe help you get ideas moving a little faster and get to that finish line a little quicker as well. The next thing is loving to win and truly appreciating the progress as you go through your day-to-day. So that love to win, like we spoke about, how so many athletes, but so many competitively driven people out there sometimes just hate to lose. And I think that desire to hang on to hardships, to hang on to disappointment can sometimes really hurt us in the long term. When we're aspiring to win, when we're aspiring to be successful, and we're seeking that true love, that connection for those successful moments, then we're going to allow those disappointments not to be something that we really hang ourselves up on, but they're going to just be learning moments. They're going to be teachable moments where we can actually say, listen, this is what I took. This is what I've learned. Yes, I'm disappointed. I'm very much at peace with the moment and my emotions in reaction to it. But at the same time, I love winning so much. It's time for me to move on. It's time for me to move forwards and get back to work. The last thing, widen that impact. What a great thing to really just go about the rest of your day. How can you widen the impact that you make? And this very much ties in both of the last things that I spoke about there. If you love to win, if you seek collaboration, then you're certainly going to be looking to widen the impact that you make on people. And this goes beyond your career. Like so many things we discuss on this show, it's not just 100% career driven. So much of the successes that we can actually find within our careers, within our sports, if you're someone still within sport, it comes back to our willingness to invest in ourselves as human beings within our lives. So how can you widen the impact that you make on a day-to-day basis within your world, within your community that you exist within? If you're able to do that, think about how much more available you're showing that you are to people. Think about how much involved you suddenly are with other people's success. That's a great position to be in within life. So widen that impact that you're able to make on a day-to-day basis. 3 things that I personally took from my discussion there with Darrian. I would like to think that there's so many other things that you guys took as well. But listen, in the meantime, I'd love to hear what you thought about the episode. Reach out to me, steve@careercompetitor.com, or you can always contact me through Instagram, where I post every episode, career_competitor. With all that in mind, guys, I appreciate you listening to the show. There's so many exciting things going on right now around both the show and also the coaching service that I'm providing through Career Competitor. Make sure you're connecting with us, make sure you're following us, and make sure you're reaching out to me. I love to hear from you. But in the meantime, guys, best of luck with anything and everything you've got going on. I look forward to speaking with you all again very soon, and bye for now.